I knew something was off. Rachel had been acting distant for a while, but I brushed it off as just stress from work. We had been married for 5 years, and I figured it was just one of those phases couples go through. But the more I thought about it, the more I noticed little things. Her phone always face down on the table, the sudden late nights at the office, and the way she would flinch when I touched her shoulder. The first sign of trouble came when I noticed her texting more than usual, always quick to hide her phone when I walked into the room. I didn't want to be that guy, a suspicious husband looking for trouble where there was none, but my gut was telling me otherwise. I told myself it was probably just work. After all, Rachel was a project manager and deadlines could be stressful, but deep down, a part of me felt like I was lying to myself. One night I came home early. I expected to surprise her with dinner, but when I walked in, the house was eerily quiet. The lights were dimmed, and I could hear her laughter echoing from the backyard. My heart sank as I rounded the corner and saw her. She was sitting on a sun lounger laughing with Lucas, our landscaper. I felt my blood run cold. Lucas was a nice enough guy, but I had seen the way he looked at Rachel, admiringly, almost too closely. That laughter, the way she threw her head back, was a sound I hadn't heard from her in months. I stood in the shadows, my breath hitching in my throat. They were too close. I could see the way her hand brushed against his arm, and I felt my heart shatter. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I wanted to scream, to rush out there and confront them both, but I couldn't. I felt frozen, caught in a web of denial and anger. I finally turned around and left the house, my mind racing. I needed time to process this. I drove around the neighborhood, replaying every moment in my head. I felt nauseous. How could she do this to me? I had been a good husband. I worked hard to provide for us, and I thought we were building a life together. After a few hours of driving, I went home. Rachel was still there, her laughter now replaced with silence. I walked in and she looked up, surprised to see me. There was a guilty look in her eyes that I didn't want to miss. She tried to put on a bright smile, asking about my night, but I could see right through her facade. I confronted her about what I had seen. I demanded to know the truth. Her initial reaction was defensive. "How could you think that? You're being paranoid," she said, her voice rising. I felt the anger boil inside me. She was lying through her teeth and I could see it. I told her I wasn't blind and that I knew what I had seen. Rachel's demeanor shifted then, transforming from defiance to a kind of cold resignation. "Okay, so what if I have? You're always busy and Lucas makes me feel seen." The words stung. Those simple, cold sentences cut deeper than any knife could. It was as if she had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it cracked. I was filled with anger and disbelief. How could she throw everything away because of some fleeting attention from a guy who was supposed to be just a landscaper? I tried to reason with her, to find any shred of care for our relationship in her eyes, but all I found was a selfish urge to justify her actions. The confrontation spiraled into a shouting match, and for the first time in our marriage, I realized how little we understood each other. That night, as I lay on the couch, I felt both anger and sorrow intertwining. I wanted to scream, cry, and break something all at once. My mind raced through memories. Our wedding day, the laughter we had shared, the dreams we had built together. I felt betrayed and utterly alone. The discovery of Rachel's affair shattered my world. It forced me to confront everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and commitment. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, and the overwhelming desire for revenge. But revenge would have to wait. I needed to think clearly about how I was going to move forward from this betrayal. I didn't want to be the guy who wallowed in sorrow. I wanted to reclaim my dignity. Rachel had made her choice. Now I needed to make mine. And with that thought, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I would build something beautiful, something that would reflect the love and care I had once poured into our garden. I would create something stunning without her. I took a deep breath, facing the emptiness of our home, and set my mind on the revenge I would orchestrate. I was going to turn the tables. She would see what she had lost, and she would understand the depth of her mistake. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to take those steps. The first of many would be to reclaim my space and my strength. I was ready to begin. After that explosive confrontation with Rachel, I felt a strange mix of clarity and chaos. I knew I needed to focus on myself and my next steps. That night after she went to bed, I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the walls. The house felt hollow. I could still hear echoes of her laughter with Lucas, taunting me in the silence. I took a deep breath, pushing down the anger and sadness. I needed a plan. Next morning, I woke up early. Before Rachel could say anything or try to talk things over, I slipped out of the house and drove to the local garden center. I had always loved working with my hands, and I remembered how much joy I found in landscaping our yard when we first moved in. That was before life got busy, and I forgot to take care of the little things that mattered. As I walked through the aisles, I felt a spark of excitement for the first time in days. I picked out flowers, shrubs, and trees that would create a vibrant, lush garden, something that would breathe life into the dead air of our home. I envisioned a beautiful space filled with color and fragrance, a sanctuary that would symbolize my recovery and reclaiming of what I had lost. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into transforming our backyard. I dug, planted, and nurtured every inch of that space, pouring my heart into every flower and tree. I didn't care how much it cost. This was my therapy. I relished the feeling of dirt under my nails. Each scoop of earth was a release of the pent-up frustration and pain I had been holding onto. I scheduled the landscaper, Lucas, to come by for the initial consultation, knowing Rachel would be around. I wanted her to see that I was taking control of my life, and I was going to make this garden something extraordinary. When Lucas arrived, I could see the uneasiness in Rachel's eyes. She wasn't expecting to see him and me working together. The tension was palpable, but I feigned ignorance. "Hey, Lucas. Glad you could make it," I said, keeping it cheerful as if we were old friends. Rachel stood awkwardly at the back door, arms crossed, watching with a mix of confusion and frustration. "Wow, James, you're really going all out, huh?" Lucas replied, trying to keep things casual. I could see Rachel's stony expression, but I pushed through it. "Yeah, I decided it was time to really invest in this space. Maybe we can finally have those garden parties we always talked about." Rachel shot me a glare that could melt ice. I ignored it, focusing instead on discussing plans with Lucas. I pointed out where I wanted flower beds, trees, and a small fountain that would add some charm. I could feel Rachel's eyes on me, and it fueled my determination. As the days passed, I hired Lucas for the job, and together we worked to create the most beautiful garden I could imagine. I handpicked every plant. The vibrant colors of the begonias and the fragrant lavender were a direct contrast to the bleakness I felt inside. The garden began to take shape, a representation of my healing journey. Every weekend, I'd wake up early, excited to work. I'd spend hours digging, planting, and watering. I even started learning about gardening techniques, watching instructional videos online. There was a joy in the labor, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, Rachel's behavior became increasingly erratic. She tried to get me to talk about our marriage, but I refused to engage. I was no longer the man who would let her walk all over him. I could sense her frustration, and I thrived on it. I wanted her to see the transformation, to understand the depth of my commitment to reclaiming myself. One evening, after a long day of planting, I stepped back to admire my work. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the garden. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. I was creating beauty. It was a stark contrast to the darkness Rachel had brought into my life. That night, Rachel approached me, her approach hesitant. "James, can we talk?" she asked softly. I could see the remorse in her eyes, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down. I took a deep breath before replying. "I don't think there's much left to say, Rachel." She opened her mouth as if to argue, but I raised my hand to stop her. "You made your choices, now I'm making mine. I'm focusing on myself in this garden. I'm building something beautiful, and I want you to see that." Her face fell, and I could sense her frustration boiling beneath the surface. "You can't just ignore what we've been through," she shot back, her voice rising. "I'm not ignoring it. I'm acknowledging it. I'm just moving forward," I replied calmly. "You had your chance, and you chose someone else. I'm done wallowing in pain." The look on her face was a mix of anger and realization. I could tell she hadn't expected me to stand my ground. I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes as she realized I wasn't going to be her emotional punching bag anymore. As the garden flourished, so did I. Every beautiful bloom served as a reminder of my strength and resilience. I was not only reclaiming my space, I was redefining my identity. I was no longer just Rachel's husband. I was James, a man who would not let betrayal define him. And with every flower that bloomed, I felt a step closer to a new beginning. I didn't need Rachel's approval or her presence to find joy. I was beginning to understand that beauty could come from pain, and I was determined to show her exactly what she had lost. I was ready for the next phase of my plan. As the weeks rolled on, my garden transformed into a vibrant oasis. Each day I spent within those flower beds was like therapy. I watched as the petals unfurled and the greenery flourished, and with every new bloom I felt my heart heal a little more from the wounds Rachel had inflicted. I had dug deep into the soil, and in doing so, I had also unearthed parts of myself I thought were lost. Rachel, on the other hand, was like a storm cloud lingering above. She tried to engage me, asking about my progress, but her questions felt hollow. It was as if she wanted to understand the beauty I was creating but was also afraid of what that beauty represented. I sensed that she was struggling with the reality of her choices, and the more I built, the more it felt like I was building a wall between us. One evening I was in the garden planting some new perennials when I heard her voice behind me. "James, can we talk?" she asked cautiously. I straightened up, wiped the sweat off my brow, and turned to face her. "What's on your mind, Rachel?" I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I see what you're doing here. It's beautiful," she admitted reluctantly, her eyes scanning the colorful blooms. "But I want to understand. Are you really okay?" That question hung in the air like a bitter reminder of everything that had happened. "I'm not sure 'okay' is the right word," finally answered, "but I'm moving forward. This garden is my way of taking control of my life again." "I didn't think you'd take it this far," she said, her voice laced with regret. "I thought we could work things out." "Work things out," I shot back, my voice rising. "You don't just get to decide that after you've made your choices. You don't get to control the narrative anymore." Her face fell, and I could see the anger and guilt warring within her. "Maybe I made a mistake, but can't we just talk about it? You're shutting me out." "I'm not shutting you out," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "I'm just done trying to fix something that you broke. I need to focus on me right now." She looked away, clearly frustrated. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, desperately trying to find a way back into my good graces. I felt almost sorry for her, but I couldn't allow myself to slip back into that role of being the husband who would forgive and forget. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but reflect on how different things had become. The garden had become a symbol of my resilience, and I realized that each flower I planted was a step away from Rachel and the pain she had caused. But as much as I was enjoying this new chapter, I also felt a flicker of sadness. I missed the idea of us, the partnership we once had. Despite the turmoil, I was determined to make this work for me. I started visiting local gardening clubs and communities, connecting with people who shared my interest. I met other enthusiasts who inspired me. They shared tips, tricks, and even offered to help with my garden. I found solace in their company, a sense of community that I realized I had long been missing. One Saturday afternoon, while I was busy planting new seeds, one of the members of the gardening club, a woman named Sarah, stopped by. She had heard about my project and offered to lend a hand. She was kind, with an infectious enthusiasm for gardening that made me smile. As we worked side by side, I started to feel a connection. We talked about our favorite plants and gardening techniques. And for the first time since Rachel's betrayal, I felt a flicker of something other than anger or sadness. It was refreshing to have someone appreciate my hard work, to see the beauty I was creating without any baggage attached. Rachel, of course, noticed the changes. I could see the jealousy simmering beneath the surface whenever she caught me laughing with Sarah or discussing plants. She tried to insert herself into my conversations, but I could sense the tension. I knew she was struggling with the reality that I was moving forward, that I was finding joy outside of our marriage. One evening, after a particularly long day in the garden, Rachel approached me. "You should be careful with Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with discontent. "I don't want you getting too close to her." "Why? Are you worried about me?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because I thought you were too busy with Lucas to care." Her face flushed with anger, and for a moment I feared she might lash out. Instead, she took a deep breath and tried a different approach. "James, I want to fix this. I really do. Can't we just start over? Start over?" I echoed, incredulous. "How can we start over when you've already burned that bridge? You made your choice, Rachel. You chose to betray me and throw away what we had. This is all on you." Her eyes were filled with tears, but I felt no sympathy. I had cried enough for both of us. I understood that she was struggling with the consequences of her actions, but I wasn't about to allow her to manipulate me back into a position of vulnerability. The garden continued to flourish, and so did my resolve. I was creating something beautiful, a testament to my ability to rise from the ashes of betrayal. Each time Rachel walked past the flowers I had planted, I could see her wrestling with the reality of her choices, and I reveled in it. I realized that life was too short to dwell on heartbreak. I was finding my footing, and with Sarah's encouragement and friendship, I felt like I was finally moving towards a brighter future. I started to think about what I wanted from life and from my relationships. With every new bloom, I was learning to embrace the possibilities ahead. As summer approached and the garden reached its peak, I felt a newfound sense of freedom. I was ready to fully embrace this new chapter and take control of my own happiness without Rachel. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a man ready to build a life filled with beauty, passion, and possibly love again. As the garden flourished, so did my confidence. I began to find joy in the solitude and the labor of creating something from nothing. I spent evenings watering my plants and morning hours tending to them, watching the blooms unfold with every passing day. The vibrant colors and fragrant scents began to fill the air, replacing the bitterness that had once lingered in our home. Rachel, however, seemed to struggle more with each beautiful blossom. She watched me from a distance, her mood shifting from anger to sadness, and I could sense her frustration boiling beneath the surface. She attempted to engage with the garden, asking if she could help, but I politely declined. I needed this time for myself, a sanctuary where I could reclaim my identity. I was no longer the man who would let her dictate my happiness. One sunny afternoon, Sarah came over to help me with a new design for a flower bed. We had developed a friendship that felt genuine, and I appreciated her enthusiasm and support. As we laid out our plans, I felt a sense of ease and comfort that I hadn't experienced in a long time. We laughed and shared stories, and I found myself forgetting the pain of the past, if only for a moment. Just as we were about to dive into planting, Rachel walked outside. I could see the tension in her body as she approached us. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "Just working on the flower beds. Sarah is helping me with the layout," I replied casually, hoping to diffuse the situation. Rachel's eyes flicked between Sarah and me, her expression hardening. "I didn't know you were so close. Are you sure this is just about gardening?" I felt a pang of irritation. "Yes, Rachel, it's just gardening. I thought you'd like to see the garden grow without any drama." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're spending a lot of time with her. She seems to be more important to you than I am right now." Maybe because she respects my choices and is genuinely interested in what I'm doing, I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. "You've made it clear that you're not. You made your choice and now I'm making mine." Rachel's face fell, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. But instead of apologizing, she turned and stormed back inside, slamming the door behind her. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and pity. I didn't want to feel sorry for her. I wanted to take control of my life without her interference. As the days passed, I noticed the garden continued to thrive. I spent more time with Sarah, and our friendship deepened. We shared gardening tips, but we also talked about life, her dreams, my aspirations, and the lessons we had both learned through our struggles. It was refreshing to connect with someone who truly understood the importance of building something from the ground up. One evening, as we sat on my patio, sipping lemonade and watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. Sarah shared her struggles with relationships and how she had learned to prioritize herself. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in navigating the complexities of love and betrayal. "That garden is a reflection of you, James," she said, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. "You're creating beauty in a place that once held pain. It's powerful." Her words resonated deeply within me. I had spent so long feeling like a victim of Rachel's betrayal, but now I realized I had the power to shape my own narrative. The garden was not just a project. It was a testament to my resilience and growth. As summer rolled on, I decided to throw a garden party to celebrate the completion of the project. I invited friends from the gardening club and a few close friends I had kept in touch with over the years. It was a chance to showcase all the hard work I had put into the garden and to embrace my newfound identity. When I told Rachel about the party, I could see her jaw tighten. "You're really going to invite all those people over and just act like everything is fine?" she asked, her tone incredulous. "It is fine, better than fine," I replied, feeling empowered. "I'm finally moving forward, Rachel. You should consider doing the same." She opened her mouth to respond but then closed it, visibly struggling with the reality of my words. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. The party would be a celebration of my growth, and I wanted her to witness it, even if it pained her to do so. As the day of the party approached, I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. I spent hours preparing, making sure everything was perfect: the food, the decorations, and of course, the garden. I wanted to create an inviting atmosphere where people could enjoy the beauty I had cultivated. On the day of the party, as the sun set and the lights strung through the trees began to twinkle, I was filled with a sense of accomplishment. My friends arrived, bringing laughter and positive energy that filled the air. I felt alive and free in a way I hadn't in years. Rachel showed up uninvited, and I could see the tension in her posture. She stood at the edge of the party, arms crossed, watching as I mingled with guests and basked in the joy of the moment. I pretended not to notice her at first, wanting to enjoy my hard-earned celebration without her negativity overshadowing it. But as the night rolled on, I eventually approached her. "You look like you could use a drink," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "What's the point of all this?" she asked, her voice low and bitter. "You think throwing a party will make everything better?" "No, Rachel, I think throwing a party shows that I'm finally taking my life back. This garden represents my healing, and I want to celebrate that," I replied, my voice steady. Rachel's expression softened for a moment, but I could see the struggle within her. "I just didn't think you would move on so quickly," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you should have considered that before you decided to betray me." "This is my journey now, and I'm not sorry for finding joy in it," I said firmly. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, processing what I had just said. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was finally standing up for myself, reclaiming my identity, and building the life I wanted, one that didn't involve her. The rest of the night was a blur of laughter, joy, and celebration. I was surrounded by friends who appreciated the beauty I had created and supported me in my journey forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope for the future, hope for new beginnings, and hope for love. Love built on trust, respect, and honesty. As the night began to wind down, Sarah and I found ourselves sitting together, watching the stars twinkle above. "You've done something incredible here, James," she said softly. "I'm really proud of you." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thank you, Sarah. I couldn't have done it without the encouragement of friends like you." As I looked out at the garden, filled with blooming flowers and laughter, I couldn't help but feel grateful. I had turned the pain of betrayal into beauty, and in doing so, I had rediscovered myself. I was ready for whatever came next, and I was determined to face it head-on. The garden party was a resounding success, and it felt like a turning point for me. Surrounded by friends who celebrated my journey, I found a sense of completion that I hadn't realized I was missing. The laughter and joy became a backdrop to the transformation I had undergone, and each moment felt like a victory against the shadows of my past with Rachel. However, as the excitement of the party faded and the guests began to leave, I noticed Rachel lingering at the edge of the garden. She stood in the shadows, arms crossed, wearing a contemplative expression that oscillated between regret and resentment. I could sense she wanted to approach me, but something held her back. As the last of my friends departed, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I walked over to her, feeling the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between us. "You should have joined us, Rachel. It was a celebration of everything I've built," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I didn't know if I belonged here anymore," she admitted, her voice softer than it had been in weeks. "It's hard to see you happy after everything. Maybe you should have thought about that before you made your choices," I replied, the edge creeping back into my voice. "You can't expect me to feel sorry for you when you're the one who broke our trust." "I know," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I messed up. I see that now, but watching you thrive, it hurts. I thought I could have it all, but now," she trailed off, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not about having it all, Rachel. It's about being honest and respectful," I said, trying to keep my composure. "You chose pleasure over partnership. You chose betrayal over love." Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with. "I wish I could take it back," she said quietly. "I want to fix things, but I don't know how." "Fixing things doesn't come from words, Rachel. It comes from actions. And so far all I see are excuses," I replied, feeling a mixture of anger and pity surge within me. "You need to understand that I'm not the same person I was before. I'm not going to just forget." "I know that," she said, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice. "But I want to try. I want to understand what went wrong. Can't we start over? Can we really start over after everything that's happened?" I challenged, crossing my arms. "You can't just erase the past because you feel guilty. You have to face the consequences of your choices." She looked down, the weight of her mistakes pressing heavily on her shoulders. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance to show you that I can change, that I can be better." I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my chest tighten. "You need to figure out what better looks like for you first. I'm not going to be your safety net while you sort through your mess. I'm focused on my own healing right now." Rachel nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I get it," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I just don't want to lose you completely." I hesitated, the ache in my heart returning. "You already lost me, Rachel. I'm not the man you once knew, and I don't think I can trust you again. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild, and I need space to figure out what that looks like." We stood in silence, the weight of our shared history heavy in the air. It was both freeing and painful to admit that I was ready to move on, and yet still felt tethered to the memories of our past. After a long moment, Rachel wiped her eyes and took a step back. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll give you space. I really do want you to be happy, even if it's without me." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, feeling a mix of sadness and relief washing over me. "I need to focus on the garden and on myself for now. You should do the same." As Rachel turned to leave, I felt an unexpected pang of loss. There was a time when I would have done anything to fix our relationship, but now I realized that some things were beyond repair. I wanted to build a life full of love and trust, and I knew I couldn't do that if I was still anchored to the past. The next few days were quiet, filled with the sounds of nature and the labor in my garden. I spent my mornings tending to the flowers and my evenings reconnecting with the friends I had made through gardening. The support was overwhelming, and I felt a sense of community that had been missing for so long. One afternoon, as I was working on my new vegetable patch, Sarah stopped by to lend a hand. "Hey, how's the garden coming along?" she asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "It's thriving," I replied with a smile, wiping the sweat off my brow. "I'm thinking of expanding it a bit more. I want to try my hand at growing some herbs and veggies." "That sounds amazing. Fresh herbs are the best," she said, her excitement contagious. As we worked side by side, I found myself opening up to her about the recent conversation with Rachel. "I think she finally understands the weight of her choices," I admitted. but it's still hard to process the whole situation. I can't just let her back in my life. Rebuilding trust takes time, James. You're doing the right thing by focusing on yourself first, she said reassuringly. And it's okay to feel conflicted. Healing isn't linear. Her words resonated deeply within me. I realized that my journey wasn't just about the garden. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of my relationship with Rachel. With each passing day, I felt more empowered to move toward a future that was bright and full of possibilities. As summer began to fade into autumn, the garden began to take on a new character. Flowers bloomed in brilliant colors, and the vegetables I had planted started to show signs of thriving. I felt a sense of peace as I walked through the garden, marveling at the fruits of my labor and the beauty I had created. One evening, as I sat on the patio, watching the sunset cast a warm glow over my vibrant oasis, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. I had turned a painful chapter of my life into something beautiful, something that would serve as a reminder of my strength and resilience. I realized that I was ready to embrace whatever came next, be it new friendships, new love, or simply a deeper connection with myself. I had learned that life would continue to present challenges, but I was no longer afraid of them. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to cultivate a life that reflected my true self. With the garden as my sanctuary and a symbol of my journey, I felt hopeful for the future. It was time to let go of the past and embrace the beauty of what was yet to come. I was ready for the next chapter, whatever it may hold. As the seasons changed, so did my perspective on life. The vibrant blooms of summer slowly gave way to the earthy hues of autumn, and with that transition, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. The garden had become a sanctuary, a place where I could cultivate not just plants, but my own growth and healing. I still thought about Rachel occasionally, especially as I tended to the flowers that seemed to thrive under my care. Her absence lingered like a shadow, but I no longer felt trapped by it. I realized that her choices had been her own, and while the hurt was real, it did not have to define my future. One crisp evening, I was working in the garden when I heard footsteps approaching. I turned to see Sarah walking toward me, a warm smile on her face. "Hey, I brought some homemade vegetable soup for you. Thought you might enjoy it after a long day," she said cheerfully. "Wow, thank you. That's really thoughtful of you," I replied, feeling a flutter of warmth at her kindness. We settled onto the patio, the soup steaming between us, as we talked about our weeks and shared stories about our gardening successes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. "You know, I've really enjoyed our time together," I said, looking at Sarah. "You've brought a lot of joy and inspiration back into my life." "I feel the same way, James," she replied, her eyes glinting in the fading light. "You've been through so much, and it's amazing to see how you've transformed your pain into something beautiful. It's inspiring." I couldn't help but smile at her words. "Thank you, it's been a journey, but the garden has helped me find my footing again. I've realized that I'm worth more than the pain Rachel caused me." She nodded, her gaze steady. "You absolutely are. You deserve to be happy to find someone who appreciates you for who you are." Our eyes locked for a moment, and suddenly there was an undeniable connection between us. I felt a flutter in my chest, a mix of excitement and nervousness. It dawned on me that I was ready to explore what could be next in my life, and perhaps with Sarah. I took a deep breath. I've spent so long focusing on healing, but I think I'm ready to open my heart again. I don't want to rush anything, but I'd like to see where this connection could lead. A smile broke across Sarah's face, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "I'd like that too," she replied softly. "Let's take things at our own pace and see where it goes." As we shared the warmth of the soup and laughter, I felt a sense of hope bloom within me, akin to the flowers I tended in my garden. The past was still part of my story, but it no longer dictated who I was becoming. In the following weeks, Sarah and I spent more time together, not just in the garden but also outside of it. We explored local parks, visited farmers markets, and exchanged recipes, each outing deepening our connection. I found myself looking forward to our time together, and it was as if the heaviness of the past was lifting away, replaced by the lightness of newfound possibilities. One afternoon, as we worked together planting bulbs for spring, I glanced over at Sarah. "Do you think I'm crazy for wanting to create a space that brings joy?" I asked, my hands busy in the soil. "Not at all," she replied, her smile brightening her face. "It's wonderful to want to cultivate beauty and happiness. It's what we all need, especially after facing tough times." Her words resonated deeply. I had turned my pain into purpose, and now I was finding companionship in someone who shared my passion for life. I realized I could embrace love again, not as a replacement for what I had lost, but as a celebration of what I had rebuilt. As winter approached, the garden became a canvas of dormant beauty, waiting for the promise of spring. I spent the colder months planning for the future, sketching out ideas for expansions to the garden and nurturing the burgeoning relationship with Sarah. One evening, as the first snow began to fall, we sat together on the patio, sipping hot cocoa and watching the flakes dance in the moonlight. "I can't wait to see what spring brings," I said, my voice filled with excitement. "Me too," Sarah replied, her eyes twinkling. "I think this will be the best garden yet." With her beside me, I felt ready for anything. The garden had been a reflection of my journey, a symbol of resilience, beauty, and growth. It had allowed me to heal from the hurt of betrayal and find hope in new beginnings. As the snowflakes settled softly around us, I took a moment to appreciate how far I had come. I had transformed pain into beauty, and in doing so I had rediscovered my strength. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was James, a man ready to embrace love, life, and the vibrant possibilities ahead. And with Sarah by my side, I felt ready to cultivate a future filled with beauty, trust, and the joy of shared moments. A future that would thrive just as my garden did, blooming anew with every season.